Agnipath scheme will mark its 2-year anniversary in June this year. When the scheme was introduced, it got widespread criticism across the nation. While some questioned the tenure of this employment, other people questioned the pension service. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said that Agnipath has been a game changer for the armed forces. It is youthful, high-tech and ultra-modern. Moreover, the government has argued that after the completion of their services, Agniveers would contribute to the civil society through their education, skills and discipline. Although people have questioned their skills as well. Now, the Indian Army has decided to recommend major changes to the Agnipath scheme. What would be these changes and what improvements do we need in Agnipath scheme is the big question that we're going to discuss in the next half an hour. Joining us on the show is Major Mohammad Ali Shah, defence expert. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director of India Foundation, is also with us on the broadcast. Major General Shashi Asthana, Global Strategic and Military Analyst, also joins us on the panel. Last but not the least, Major General P.K. Sehgal, defence expert, also joins us on this important conversation. Thank you everyone for being a part of this show. General Asthana, I'll begin with you. Well, of course, the criticism. Let's talk about the criticism first that came towards the scheme. And of course, it was the duration of the time that these Agniveers are going to be spending in inculcating all these skills and strategies and tactics to serve the Indian Army better. And secondly was, of course, the fact that only 25% of these people will be retained and a large number of them, 3/4, will be let go. This also became a point of concern as it was assumed that, the part where not too many people will be below the officer's rank is going to hurt the potency of the armed forces. Where do you stand on this? And if you had a couple of suggestions of yours to make to the government, what would they be, sir?
Yeah, I do have a couple of suggestions to be made to the government. And firstly, as far as the criticism part is concerned, let's face facts that any scheme which is inducted into the army, forget about the politics, has to be viewed from two angles. One is the operational efficiency angle, and second is the human resource angle. Now, as far as this Agniveer scheme is concerned, it does require much more percentage of retention. This 25% of retention is too less. In my opinion, it should be 75% retention and 25%. That is just tweak the numbers on the opposite side. My rationale for that is that firstly, we need required experience. Secondly, this 25% turnover also gives a sense of competition. I recently visited a unit where all demonstrations of adventure sports were given to me by the Agniveers. And Agniveer's performance by virtue of these competitions, that's what all the officers said, is fairly good. So it's not a bad scheme. It's a good scheme, but all schemes do need improvements as we go along and gain experience. If we compare it with the Short Service Commission, we had a similar scheme. In Short Service Commission, the officers were there for 5 years, and subsequently, a number of them were to leave. That was to ensure that the pyramidal structure of the higher ranks is maintained. But as we went along and gained experience, the retention percentage became very high. So therefore, there is no crib as far as the Short Service Commission officers are concerned, because most of the officers who are okay, they do get retained, and there are some officers who want to leave, and there are some officers who are not found fit to be there, and they are the only officers who get turned over. Now, similar experience, if we increase the retention percentage, will perhaps be this scheme will be more acceptable. Then there are one or two more anomalies, like an Agniveer dying in an operational scenario or in the line of duty. Now, in these two cases, certainly there is an element of reformation required, wherein two persons dying in the same operational environment must get the same treatment. Although, as of now, the Agniveer, in case he dies on the lines of duty, he gets something around between 1 to 1.2 crores, depending upon his residual service, which is reasonably almost the same as the other one. But in long term, it makes a difference. So this will have to be perhaps plugged. Secondly, the training period. I think there is no doubt that this concern is there, that for equipment intensive operations and equipment intensive arms, the amount of time which the soldier is required to spend with the equipment is fairly long, and therefore the amount of training is not adequate, and therefore there is a need to increase the training part of it. So therefore the training of Agniveer can be in two parts. One is the portion which is being done in the center, and second is on the job training, which can be longer. But if we tweak the retention percentage and make it to 75% retention and 25% turnover, I think most of the anomalies of the scheme would get resolved, and most of the, shall I say, the problems which of uncertainty which these boys are facing, that may perhaps will come under control, like it happened in case of short service commissions officers, and the officers are performing very well, and the officers have a choice whether to be there or not. Major Shah is one of such case. So therefore, I think we could perhaps these two major and in training period, these 2-3 major reforms would perhaps make the scheme much more acceptable and much more, shall I say, implementable and much more popular. Back to you, Vineet.
General Katoch, in fact, when the Agnipath scheme was launched, the intention was clear. It had to reduce the pension bill, and it had to boost youth recruitment to a large extent in the armed forces. However, there have been concerns about the lack of training and expertise amongst newly recruited soldiers. What are some of the pain points, according to you, that the government must address?
Thank you, Vineet. Vineet, let me give you, I had written about the Agnipath scheme even well before it was launched. And I've written very extensively on this post its launching, and I've got slightly different views. One thing, when we're talking about, there is a requirement to reduce the pension expenditure. That is a fair one. Also, it has been said that this is a very potent manpower which we have, and that is also a very strong case for retention. But I would like to put it to you in this manner. We have got the Assam Rifles, which is a paramilitary force, and then we have got the Central Armed Police Forces, that is the BSF and the CRPF. Now, why are we taking this manpower which has been trained at such great expense and then just letting it go into civvy street? I feel a portion of this should actually be sent into these forces, and this should be a mandatory requirement. It will look after two aspects. One, this manpower will be utilized, and secondly, the security forces, that is the BSF and the Assam Rifles, they get trained manpower. They don't have to train them again. Now, there will be opposition to this from the police. I'm absolutely aware of it. So this will require a major push from the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, and the Defense Minister. It won't be executed otherwise, but it will resolve a very good percentage of the problem. Now, in my view, the retention should be up to, say, 50%. You can stretch it to 60%. There has to be an element, say about 20 to 25%, which goes into the CRPF, into the Assam Rifles, and into the BSF. And that should be made mandatory. The rest, 20 to 25%, I think we must let it go. Every person who joins the armed forces may not be a suitable material. And this is the power which the CEO has, that, okay, now we have got certain flexibility. 75% of them will be absorbed in the security forces, and some must go. I think that would be a very viable step. Secondly, you see, the question was, we always had color service earlier. Prior to 71, there used to be 7 years color service and 7 years in the reserve. Nobody raised a hue and cry at that point of time. So why now? There is a requirement to reduce the pension bill, but it can be offset to a very large extent by putting a very large number of these personnel into the other security forces. And I'm quite certain a large number will also be absorbed automatically into the private sector. The question has come up about the short service officers. You see, it is a very good step, but then it became a welfare scheme. You wanted to make every short service officer a permanent officer, and that defeated the very purpose of the scheme. Short service scheme is defeated by the very nature of making it permanent. I think even that needs a review, and we must think in different ways as to how we review this particular scheme. Vineet.
Absolutely. And General Sehgal, of course, the Indian Army has also made certain suggestions. Of course, the service period from 4 years to 7, 8 years is what we are, speculating is perhaps a suggestion that's going to be given by the Army. Additionally, they've also recommended that the entry age for Agniveers should be technically, or into the technical field, should be 23 years. And of course, there's this operational experiential gap that Agniveer is also going to throw up, which is going to be a challenge, and it'll take almost a decade or more to fill that up. Is there a point in all of this that the government perhaps needs to consider very seriously?
Absolutely and totally. If you notice, this scheme was imposed from the top without any debate, dialogue, or consultation. The stakeholders were not taken into confidence. The people of the country was not taken into confidence. In fact, the scheme was being sold by the service chiefs on the TV. This is the first time in 75 years that the service chiefs themselves were selling the scheme. I had an opportunity of meeting the defense minister, wherein he said the scheme is not that of the government. He said this scheme is of the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, and they asked for our support, and we gave him the support. It was a misstatement, and the government began to realize that this will cost them very dearly in the future, particularly in the elections. And it is therefore that before the election, the government did realize and said the scheme will be reviewed after the elections are over. In every state, which is on the border state and which sends a lot of people to the armed forces, the government was on the receiving end. The opposition parties have condemned the scheme. The veterans have by and large condemned the scheme, including me about more than 100 times on the TV. The suggestions of the armed forces are very important. This scheme was imposed with 4 aims in view. Firstly, to reduce the salary bill. Second, to reduce the pension bill, reduce the gratuity, and also to cut down the total strength of the armed forces, which the government felt needs to be cut down, notwithstanding the fact that we got 2.5 fronts to cater for. So all the aims were actually not very fair and were not thought through very well. Now the armed forces have sought a feedback from everybody who matters, from the Agniveers themselves, from the unit commanders, from the training centers, and from everybody else who's involved with the scheme. And based on that, they've given a few suggestions, 4 of them. Firstly, that 60 to 70% should be retained. I totally agree with them. Second is that the length of the service should be increased to minimum 7 to 8 years. We got highly sophisticated, technology-intensive equipment in the air defense, in engineers, in EME, armored corps, etc. Wherein it takes a very long time for a person to be trained. And once he's trained, you let him go. It will be a huge loss to the nation, huge loss to the armed forces, and it will affect the operational relevance of the Indian armed forces. It will affect the homogeneity and the integrity, morale and the motivation of the armed forces in a very major way. And this ought to be looked at. Also, they said that for 1 year they increase the age to 23. But for if you want technical people, competent enough to be trained for Air Force, Navy, particularly those you bought a Rafale for 1,600 crores. I had asked the erstwhile air chief. I said, I'm myself a pilot. I've flown for about 11 years. We don't allow anybody with less than 7 to 8 years service to clear the aircraft. Because in the Air Force, it's the pilots who fight the war. The ground crew prepares the aircraft, put sensors, weaponizes, put various warning receivers, etc., pods, etc., and put the weapons, etc. I said, an aircraft which is costing 1,600 crores, would a pilot fly being cleared by the Agniveers? He did not respond. So I said, I won't embarrass you, I've got to reply. So obviously, all the service chiefs also felt, the Army commands also felt that the scheme needs to be modified in a very major way. And I'm glad that the government is, instead of being arrogant, is going to look at the scheme wholeheartedly once again. Essentially, the scheme should have been implemented on a test bench basis. It should have been a smaller levels should be tested out, and after testing out, it should have been brought into being for the large armed forces. And if the scheme is so good, why not have the same scheme in the police, and why not have it in the armed forces?
Right,
it's a more than 2 number. The fact that it was not done there, obviously the aim was different. As I said, to reduce the salary bill, reduce pension bill, reduce gratuity bill, and cut down the size of the cells.
Right. Mohammad Ali Shah, in fact, there have been some experts who've also said that, they have stressed that motivation and training that is required for effective, especially for that matter, in infantry units, is not enough. And this is a short tenure which has been proposed by the Agniveer scheme and should be looked into. This is perhaps one of the only facets, not one of the only facets, Mohammad Ali Shah, that definitely need attention over here. But the fact of the matter is that there is a looming and a ballooning pension bill that has concerned not only this government, but the previous governments in the past as well.
Right, Vineet. Yes, absolutely. I agree with see, many of the general officers have been against Agniveer, but I see their point of view as well. For some reason, I've had a very, very different point of view because I was a short service officer myself. I had joined the army with the clear intention of serving for 5 years only and then moving out. Though, of course, I know you cannot compare the officer's commission or a Jawan for an Agniveer. But I see the benefits of spending a few years, say about 3 to 4 to 5 years in the army, that's short service again. Be it short service commission or be it just short service. I would say army, they would say, see, the points of argument are the short service of army personnel would not put his life at stake. I rebuke that. I think that's not the case. We've had my own coursemate, Major D. Sri Ramkumar, with Ashok Chakra gallantry. In fact, honorary Captain Yogendra Singh Yadav got a Paramveer Chakra when he was 19. In fact, my instructor from the academy, Sanjay Kumar, honorary Captain now, Sanjay Kumar, he got a Paramveer Chakra when he was very, very, just in less than 5 years of service in the army again. So, secondly, about regimentation, I think regimentation also, I mean, you mean to say the officers or the Jawans who join for permanently, for the first 4 years, they would not be having regimentation. Thirdly, I would say that no, I personally think it's a very good scheme, if you ask me personally. Those are my questions. But now, having said that, I would say maybe my understanding and my knowledge and my experience is limited, obviously, because I haven't done junior command, I haven't done higher command, I haven't done NDC, I haven't done those various senior courses. But that I'm seeing it from the point of view of a person who served only for a few years in the army, a limited period of time. And if once you've had army training beneath, you are fit to prepare and face any challenge for the rest of your life. And I think youngsters are a big asset. I'll give you another small example. Who guards the frontiers on ground, first hand, hands-on? Not the senior most, the junior most rather. They stand on the frontiers on vigil. So most certainly, and secondly, when a proposed version of 20, initially when it came out that 25% would be absorbed, why can't we have the best of the best, which only gives a reason for everyone to compete? See, army is not a placement organization or the government service that, okay, sarkari naukri mil gayi. It is a way of life, and it is people who want to see adventure, they should opt for it. And if you're looking out for pension benefits, sorry, I did not get any pension. I did 5 years in the army, and I was well prepared for it. That okay, I would not get pension, but yet I wanted to experience 5 years of army life. But for me, again, I would say it was different because I had a choice. I had a choice of continuing. I had a choice of joining the Indian Military Academy, but I chose the Officers Training Academy. The Agniveers do not have a choice, but they have a choice of controlling their performance and excelling what they are doing. Because nothing succeeds like success. Ultimately, it's the performance that's going to be speaking. That's going to be if they're going to be absorbed or not.
Right, General Asthana. In fact, a number of people have also said that this scheme is also fraught with danger as it undermines national security. It also undermines, the aspirations that youth from rural India have usually relied upon or fallen back upon as a profession full of pride. What happens to the people who are in fact feeling dejected from these quarters?
See, the aspect of the human resource, that is the pride, and considering this the army as a career and the glorification, all this is directly proportional to the retention percentage. If you increase the retention, then bulk of the people are meeting their aspiration anyway, and the smaller portion who are getting turned over, they are the ones, either they don't want to be there or they are the lower performers. I will put it that way. But let me tell you, with the little bit of experience, see, the question is, speaking without experience is a slightly different thing. I made it a point to visit a unit in a difficult condition and saw the Agniveers and spoke to the Agniveers. Now, when I met them, I found that all the demonstrations were being given by the Agniveers. There was the officers confirmed that there was no hesitation of taking risk. Similarly, in my own battalion, an officer of short service commission, he is the only Mahavir Chakra, and he had 3 months of service when he earned it. So the problem is not that. The problem is that certainly we need more experience, certainly for the reasons which the other two general officers have mentioned very appropriately. We need more experience, and that experience cannot be wasted out. And that the cost of gaining that experience also cannot be wasted out. The pension bill is one aspect of it. There are other aspects also. So for the operational effectiveness, we certainly need much more retention percentage, and that will also resolve a fair amount of when, let's say hypothetically, when 75% or 60 to 70% people know that we will certainly be get retained. So bulk of the percentage is getting retained. So they are getting their pride, they are getting their pension, they are getting all the perks and privileges which the villagers are looking for, or which they are attaching it with the army or the defense forces. See, the difference between the defense forces and paramilitary forces is basically because we retire young, so therefore we need to have pensions. As far as the others are concerned, paramilitary forces, they retire at 60 and they can see through, their Jawans can see through their family getting settled during that 60 years. So that is the major difference. Now, as General Katuz has also suggested, it's a very good model to shift them out to CRPF. But unfortunately, the problem is that the CRPF and all the paramilitary forces have their own aspirations, and they say that no, we do not want the leftovers of army. And this has not worked earlier, because these vacancies and percentage vacancies also existed in case of the South Short Service Commission officers. But unfortunately, that did not work. Secondly, we were grossly short of the officers, and that is why the percentage of the retention of the Short Service Commission also increased, and therefore it suited the model. Now apply the same thing to the Agniveers. We are grossly short of manpower. Our LOCization of LAC, which has happened on the northern borders, requires much more foot soldiers on ground to maintain in the high altitude. So you need younger guys and you need more guys. So therefore, the requirement is more, and therefore the retention percentage should be more. And secondly, there was a tweaking done like earlier. My own take is, or my recommendation is, if we are talking about 17.5 to 21, then it should be 17.5 to 21, no exceptions made. Earlier, the exception was made because there were some people in pipeline who were missing out. So to sort out their grievances, it was made. But the problem is that if you keep it at 17.5 to 21, then the boy who gets enrolled, even if he is not retained, when he goes back, he is eligible for all the competitions in the country, and therefore he is not left out. He has gained experience, he has gained graduation, he has gained some money, and yet he is in competition with everybody else to take on the competitions. So let's keep it young, and that also keeps the army young. So these were the fundamentals of this scheme, and let's not tweak those fundamentals. We must get the younger guys, and younger guys after this the turnover of the Agniveers with higher retention percentage, I think things will fall in place. Vineet.
All right, we've run out of time. We'll take concluding thoughts from the rest of our panelists. General Katod, starting with you, sir. 30 seconds to each one of you.
Vineet, I'll be very quick. Just three very small points. One, if you go with the present model, and I've worked it out over a 20-year period in an infantry battalion, 80% of the manpower will be below 4 years service. It is not operationally sustainable. You will have to increase it to at least 50%. That is one. Number two, a point is also brought about that this has had, the Agniveer has had an impact on elections. There are two states, Himachal and Uttarakhand, which population-wise, per lakh of population, have the maximum number of people joining the armed forces. It has had no impact there. So I do not think this is the cause as far as elections is concerned. But operationally, this 20% ratio which I'm talking about is a very important one. We need to consider it. That is why the service must be raised to, I had suggested 6 to 7 years. If that is what is being done, I think that will be a very good step. Vineet.
All right. General Sehgal?
Two issues. Firstly, that 23 as an age extension was only meant for technical people, because you need to have technical inductees to take on the high technology equipment, which is technology intensive, which is artificial intelligence backed, which is information technology based, which is laced up with all sorts of digitization and the modern requirements, which would not be there otherwise. Second thing, no pension is given to anybody unless and until he serves up to 14 to 15 years. Now we're saying that pension to be given after 7 to 8 years. The government.
All right, sir. Mohammed Ali Shah, quickly, please. You're muted.
I think I would request your back-end team not to mute me, honestly. Okay, now the very fact is that, I strongly feel that it's a very good scheme, Reet. That's, again, I stand by that. Though, of course, I see a lot of, like, for example, people say that many people will be below 4 years of service. But it has been catered for, Reet, I feel, when this scheme came into design. Because 25% we would be retaining them, of course. So that means the best of the best we would be retaining. So I think the gap, the vacuum would be filled up. There's no question. I don't think there should be a question about that. Now, secondly, yes, I understand the apprehension and reservations of a lot of people. They have scheme on towards the scheme. But we cannot really judge unless and until we try it out. Unless and until, like, for example, I'll tell you, I've spoken to a lot of commanding officers who've got Agniveers in their battalions. I've asked them, what is the difference? They say there's no difference at all. They are as competent, as brave, as good, as disciplined as any other soldier. Now, the only question is, like, I'll give you 2 days back, I was in Dehradun. I'm still here at the passing out parade of the Indian Military Academy. Now, there again, I asked the young officers that, you'll be commanding men from Agniveer. So what is your take on that? So they said, sir, we are welcome to it. That's what the young officers had to say to me. The young who had become 2 lieutenants. So unless until we try it, execute it and see how it goes, we cannot judge the scheme. That's what I would say.
All right.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.